Welcome to the JEMS Report, brought to you by Clarendon Events, Fire and Rescue Group, and the Journal of Emergency Medical Services. My name is Ted Lee, and I'm the editor-in-chief of JEMS Magazine. Along with Jeff Frankel, our managing editor, we bring you subject matter experts and industry leaders in all things pre-hospital medicine and EMS. And today we have two special guests with us from Hennepin EMS, Ryan Mayfield, who is the assistant chief, and Andrew Pearson, who is the EMS programs principal. And today we'd like to talk to you guys about how you guys have kind of laser focused on the staffing shortage issues that everybody is running into, and a little bit about your education program. This is actually part two of a Hennepin interview. We talked with some of your education group last time as well. So thank you guys for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
So Ryan, why don't we start with you? You can give a little bit more about your background and what role you play in this mission that you've guys undertaken.
Sure. Ryan Mayfield. Ryan Mayfield, I'm the Assistant Chief of Hennepin EMS, so I oversee all the day-to-day operations of all our different divisions. Hennepin EMS is a large EMS agency. We have about 95,000 responses a year with 61,000 transports, mostly urban with some suburban areas. And we have a very diverse population in where there is that we serve. And yeah.
So how long have you been in your position? How long have you been with Hennepin EMS?
Sure. I've been in my position for about 5 years. I've been with Hennepin EMS for 6 years. Initially, I was hired over the education program, including the paramedic program. So I kind of have some of the background in the education as well as operations. But overall, I've been in EMS around the country for about 26 years now.
Okay, great. Andrew, why don't you introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah. My name's Andrew Pearson. Like you said, I'm the paramedic programs principal. I've been in EMS for 16 years now, and at Hennepin actually for the last 6. Ryan hired me shortly after he started. So in my primary role, I'm the paramedic program director. I also spend a little bit of time managing education for our P3 group, which is our group of expanded scope paramedics, and I do a little bit of research with our medical directors as well.
Great. So Ryan, on the topic of EMS shortages, and we talk about this quite a bit, and it is an issue that seems to be plaguing across the United States. What have you guys done to try to manage this and grow your workforce?
Sure. So this particular program we're talking about today, we call it the paramedic trainee program. And the idea of it came about in about 2019, implemented in 2020. And in 2019, we were seeing the staffing shortage like everybody else. And it only got worse with everything that happened in 2020 and 2021. And so we were just seeing such a decline in this number of applicants. There just wasn't people that were applying for jobs. We had one of the largest paramedic program in the state, but we still couldn't produce enough paramedics to fill the gap. On top of that, up until just very recently, at the time, we were all paramedic service, and so that decreased the pool of applicants. We've since started BLS service, but still only about less than 10 EMTs as compared to almost 200 paramedics. So we needed a way to attract more people and earlier on in their careers, so we have kind of a better grouping to choose from.
So Andrew, the last time I spoke with a group from Hennepin EMS, we were talking about some of their other programs that they were heading up. Why don't you delve a little bit more into specifically your program that you're in charge of?
Yeah, so the paramedic program, we've had a paramedic program at Hennepin since 2007. And I think back then, I wasn't a part of it back then, but the logic was we're a level 1 trauma center, we're an academic medical center, we've got the second oldest emergency medicine residency in the country. We've got an EMS fellowship. There's no reason we shouldn't be training paramedics. So we've got just a ton of natural resources here. And the program's grown since then. So now, like Ryan said, we have one of the largest paramedic programs in the state in terms of numbers of students. And we're super lucky. We've got obviously a full-time program director, but then also a full-time clinical coordinator and full-time lab coordinator, which just from my interactions with other programs seems to be relatively rare. It's a lot of sharing positions and covering multiple areas. So we're really, really lucky there. And so we've been doing this training academy since 2020, 2021, and then we also do traditional paid groups of students as well.
So when you mentioned that, so you have internal people who are already working with you, and then just standard students.
The trainees. So we've got students who attend pay tuition like traditional students, and then like Ryan was talking about, the training academy where we hire them to attend paramedic school full time.
So just a little bit more digging into your program. You mentioned you have a lot of other resources. How does that help shape your program or make it look maybe a little bit different?
Yeah, it gives us a lot of, I think, flexibility to try different things and to improve our curriculum. When I first got hired, I was in the lab coordinator position. We completely revamped the lab curriculum. We went away from it. Before, it was very, very skills-based, skills-focused. I remember when I was a student here, obsessing over the National Registry skill sheets. We completely got rid of that. We still obviously teach them skills, but now it's very, very focused on high fidelity simulation, so they could actually get to use the skills in a semi-realistic, stressful environment. So that's our lab curriculum. We also a couple years ago flipped the classroom. So this is a model where rather than students sitting in lecture falling asleep, they get to watch the lectures at home as homework, because you don't need an expert to be there for a lecture. It's just kind of a passive activity, and then we spend in-class time working on activities that kind of get at higher order thinking, critical thinking, and let the students actually work through the material, which it ends up with a really nice transition, because we've got students who start very, very slowly using the material in class during those flipped classroom sessions, but without the stress of simulation, without the stress of lab. Then they get to go use it in lab, and then they go do clinicals with our service, which, like Ryan said, is one of the busiest in the state. We've got a very diverse population. They see a ton of great things, also in our emergency department as well. So it's given us a lot of opportunity to do some really cool things with our curriculum, I think.
So Ryan, back to you. With this trainee program, what have you seen over the life of this program, which is still relatively new, so I'm sure you're still gaining information from it, with this new curriculum design and layout that Andrew was talking about?
Sure. Yeah. So we started in 2020, and we just finished up our fourth group. So we've had quite a few. And we didn't really go into it before, but what this is we hire EMTs, and then for about 7 to 8 months, their full-time job, 40 hours a week, is to become paramedics. So they're employees of the department. It's a salary, or not a salary, but a benefited position, and that's their responsibility, is to become a paramedic. And in exchange, they agree to work for us for 3 years after they finish the program. And I would say we have learned quite a bit. One of them is the time frame. We have expanded the time frame a little bit, because it was just too much information in a short amount of time. We had very great success rates, but it was still the stress of it, and just the amount of knowledge that they had to absorb was just a little too much. So we expanded that a little bit. And I think the flipped classroom model too is been a great benefit for a couple of reasons. One of them is just for scheduling purposes too, since they are since our full-time employees, 40 hours a week, we have to give them 40 hours of work. And so some of that time is given to them to do the pre-work, and then they can go into the class and actually do the hands-on and the application of it. So that usually it's worked out to be about 1 day a week that they have for the pre-work. So that's 1 day a week where the educators don't have to actually be in the classroom or lab teaching them. So it's a little less work on their part, even though it's still a lot of work to begin with.
So you mentioned extending the time frame for it, and Andrew, maybe this is more a question for you. What was it before? What has it moved to? And what are you kind of expecting the results to be? Or have you actually seen some results from this expanded or extended timeline?
Yeah, so we haven't done a cohort yet with the expanded timeline.
Okay.
It was, I think, roughly 8 months before we've expanded it now to 10 months. Like Ryan said, we had really good success rates with the prior timeline. It was a lot. It was very stressful on the students. So I hope, obviously I think we'll see still good outcomes, but hopefully we'll be wearing them out just a little bit less, I think.
And by very good success rates, it's everyone that has completed the program has passed national registry in all 4 groups. Now there's a handful that didn't make it through the program, but everyone who made it through the program has passed.
Yeah. So if you feel comfortable with this, what kind of numbers are you talking about, like each year, kind of as you progress through? Because you said the program grew, and just curious about the numbers.
Sure. So I'll say that the first year that we did it, just such a novel idea in the area, we had almost 200 applicants.
Wow.
And so we went through the whole process and selected 25 to do that. And then I can't remember, Andrew, because we've had one year that it was a little smaller, just one reason or another.
I think 12 was the smallest we've had. Yep.
I think we started 15. Well, we started with 20 something job offers, and then some of them didn't pass some of the pre-employment, and we didn't have time to put a replacement in. But usually the groups have been about 20 to 24, right?
Yeah.
Now, are those your paramedic trainees? So anybody that's coming from the outside, that's an additional number?
They're completely separate cohorts. They run on different schedules.
Oh, okay. So about how many do you have that are, I'll use the word civilian, they're not part of Hennepin?
About the same. So we try to limit our class sizes to no more than 20, 24. And so our traditional students, we've got one cohort of them running, as well as a training academy. So in total, about 40-ish students a year.
So I don't really want to get into the us versus them type of thing, but what do you see the difference between the students that are coming as trainees, as employees, versus the civilian students or non-affiliated students?
Sure. So, I mean, it's a good question, because we do end up hiring a lot of the civilian ones that come out of our program too. They have a somewhat easier time in our academy because they go out of the paramedic program and get hired into the paramedic academy because they've been more involved as employees here. And so it's a little bit easier to get through the academy with them. Definitely versus outside paramedics who come from different programs, they're much better prepared that come through our paramedic program than what we've seen from other ones.
So what kind of numbers are you seeing, and kind of what's the sense of, you guys are investing a lot in the development of this, what's your return on investment? Are they well prepared? And you say they are, but are they well prepared? Are they ready for the job? Are they staying with you? Or because I mean, I've come from an academic background as well, and there's a fair amount of students that come into EMS, and I could just call them transitional students, where they're moving on to something else. They're going into another type of healthcare field, and kind of want EMS is kind of a launching point to that. Are you? Well, that's kind of two questions there. One, are you seeing that? And then two, get back to the longevity and retention of the students that you have.
Sure. From a financial standpoint, after about a year to year and a half, I believe is what the math works out, is where we break even after
Okay.
they've been working for us for that long. And then we don't lose that many to other EMS agencies. The majority that we lose is to fire departments. And so it's it's been hit or miss through the classes, how many people have stayed. The first group just hit their 3-year mark. And so we've lost a fair number along the way. And oddly enough, there's several that left for fire department jobs and then came back because they decided that this was a better place to work. And so it's worked out. The ones that have stayed have been great employees, and it's a gamble, and we do our best to pick the right people, and most of the time they stay. Sometimes they don't.
Yeah. You mentioned that the first cohort you had close to 200 applicants. Is that something that you continue to see year to year? Maybe not as large as 200, but a pretty robust pool to draw from.
Yes, usually there's a lot of interest in it, and the only year that we probably didn't have a real large number is we just didn't have a large window. We had a very short
Mhm.
window from advertisement to when the process had to start.
Yeah.
But we have no problems filling with alternates all the positions that we have.
Yeah. So you mentioned about 3 years, going on 4 years. How's the community receiving this? And the word's getting out. They're seeing success in these students that are staying with you, or still working in the area in fire departments or other agencies. Um, you know, what has that done for the community? You say you come from a pretty diverse community anyway, naturally. Um, how has it been received, and what's the outlook for that?
Sure. I mean, I don't have any exact data. It seems to be received well. We've have people that have come from the community. In Minneapolis, we have the largest Somali population in the United States. And up until just a month or two ago, excuse me, up until just about a month or two ago, we had no Somali speaking paramedics. Uh, and we just graduated our first Somali paramedic in this last group. And so that in itself is going to be a huge benefit, because we have so many patients with a language barrier and cultural barrier that we have to get around. And that's just one example of many different people that have come from the area and are serving their own community now as paramedics.
Yeah, that's great. That always is a fortunate thing to have, especially with diverse populations having language barriers or cultural barriers that have to be addressed, on a daily basis. So when your service kind of looks like your community, it's a positive thing for the
Yeah.
group as well. So what do you guys look for in your standard candidate to come into your program?
Sure. Kind of the thought process behind this is it's easier to take a good person and make them a good paramedic than to take a paramedic and make them a good person. I'm not saying that there's not good people out there that aren't paramedics, but uh, honestly, what we look for is not necessarily medical experience, it's customer service experience. The overwhelming majority of people that we've hired have some sort of that in their background. McDonald's, uh, delivering pizzas, just things like that. We have one that did, if I remember right, 6 years of customer service for REI before he started here. And so anyone who's been in EMS for any amount of time knows that it's 95% dealing with people and 5% medicine. And so we get these people that know how to talk with people and resolve problems, and that has been one of the best investments that we have. We teach them the medical part, but it's a much harder to teach that interpersonal skills.
Right.
And so that's really the biggest thing that we look for.
Yeah, that's funny because you hear that quite a bit, and I've heard it for years and years. And when I was coming up, I shaved so you can't see the gray. I've been in it for a while too. Um, really early on, there was a service that we were shadowing, and they had the same philosophy. Look, we're strong medically. We can teach you how to do what you need to do. We can take care of you in that way. But we're just looking for outstanding people because that's the harder thing to teach or to overcome. So it's kind of refreshing to hear that again from you. So how does this work if you're a service and you're struggling and you're thinking about this because other services have tried this and some have been really successful and some haven't. Just a couple things about best practices to try to say, okay, we're going to try to develop a program to do this to help us with our recruitment and retention and cultural diversity of our service.
I mean, I would say the biggest first thing of you have to be paired with a good paramedic program, because I hire them and I've been the direct supervisor, but for the first 8 months I don't have a lot of daily interaction with these people. It's all in education, and so we have to trust that they're doing the right thing for that first 8 months, and then kind of sticking with it, because yeah, it's a big initial investment, but it definitely pays off in the long run. Um, so you really have to engage with the community and get the right people. Andrew, we have any thoughts from the education side?
Yeah, I don't think you can emphasize enough the pick the right people thing. I think Ryan always does a very good job at the beginning of the program, each time emphasizing that we hired you for who you were, not for your prior EMT experience. In the curriculum, we spend the first 150 hours making you into the EMT we want you to be. It's basically an EMT class done all over again, but with a heavy emphasis on critical thinking, anatomy, and physiology. We try to get them to stop saying BSI seems safe. That usually takes about 150 hours just to stop that habit.
Right.
So I think the big emphasis is hire the right people, hire good people, and you can turn them into medics, not the other way around.
Yeah, I was reading something the other day, and there was a little bit of a debate on whether apprenticeships could be utilized in EMS, but this is almost like an apprenticeship, so to speak. Where you're kind of a journeyman, whatever the phrase is for that, to where they're mentored through, they're in the service, they're in the system, they're familiar with it, they're learning. Even when they're not in the classroom, they're still learning about the service, the system, and kind of how things are done. So this kind of has an apprentice feel to it. For me, is that something that you guys were looking at as well?
Yeah, I think definitely there's part of that, and it's even though we've hired them and we're training them, it's an 8 month job interview too, right? And so we get to know them pretty well and get to train them the way we want them to be trained, right? And so there's not as much risk at the end as it is hiring somebody that you have no background on or no knowledge of where they came from.
Right. Well, very interesting. Gentlemen, thank you again for joining me today. It was great to hear more about Hennepin and your education program. Any last parting words for our audience about Hennepin EMS and your training? Ryan?
I mean, I'd say just I would encourage other agencies to look into this. It's even at the EMT level, there's much less resources that need to go into it, but you could still do the same thing, get good applicants and start them off at the BLS level, and then see if you can go from there onto the paramedic.
Andrew?
No, I think Ryan stole what I was going to say. Is I think even at the EMT level, this is a fantastic model because, like you said, you're capturing them early and you're turning them into the clinician you want them to be. So,
Right. All right. Well, thank you very much again. We look forward to hearing from you. And of course, if you're interested in submitting any of your findings to JEMS, we'd be interested in reading it. So, but thank you again for taking time out of your day. And thank you for your hard work.
Thank you very much.
thanks for having us.